In the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of people talking about extreme voices, but also talking about the utility of semi-occluded vocal tract exercises for extreme voices. Now, in voice acting, when we talk about extreme voices, usually people rely on general voice care, but also on semi-occluded vocal tract exercises for warm-ups and cool-down. The problem is there's nothing specific on how to activate and sustain vocal distortion. In singing, this is quite different. We usually work to isolate and activate the different mechanisms to gain control, comfort, and sustainability, and we practice vocal distortion on a weekly, monthly basis for years. So we know that there's a scientific consensus on the benefit of semi-occluded vocal tract exercises in the treatment of vocal dysphonias, but also in the improvement of vocal performance, particularly in the context of fatigue prevention and recovery. First of all, there are many types of SOVTE. The democratization of vocal pedagogy through the development of tutorials, for example on social networks, has popularized many of them, which we see being used without any discernment. In addition, in recent years, we've been witnessing the rise of a pedagogical discourse that has transformed these exercises to the point of presenting them as the ultimate and only means of developing a healthy vocal technique. However, this is not true. Exercises using straw, for example, have developed spectacularly. However, the scientific literature, if it makes it possible to establish the benefit of those devices, notes that it is not suitable for all singers, all users. In any case, a pedagogical device must always be adapted to the specific case of the person to whom it is offered. In the case of extreme vocal effects, there are currently not enough studies to certify the effectiveness of semi-occluded vocal tract exercises. This doesn't mean that we cannot use them profitably. This simply means that the pedagogy of vocal effect is still insufficiently evaluated, and the vocal science has not yet painted the landscape in its entirety. It would therefore be inaccurate to claim, for example, that the practice of SOVTE would be sufficient to balance the musculature of singers, vocalists, and voice talent using extreme vocal effects. There are a few problems with relying solely on SOVTE for extreme voices. The first one being that it offers no training method that helps to actually isolate and activate extreme vocal effect. There's a lot of extreme vocal effects that are supraglottic, meaning that the source of distortion is not the vocal folds, and we know semi-occluded vocal tract exercises target specifically the vocal folds. There's minimal scientific research, so there's little evidence about the health benefits for extreme voices. The research is short-term, meaning that there's no longitudinal study on the health benefit of SOVTE for extreme voices. And if you look at most video on YouTube or everywhere, it's generic, and we know that SOVTs should be tailored to the needs of the voice talent, but most methods offer generic exercises. So SOVTE can definitely contribute to overall vocal health, but they are not the primary source of vocal health for extreme voices. So why are so many vocal health specialists quick to recommend SOVTE exercises for extreme vocal when the vast majority of long-term practitioners barely know or practice them and can remain vocally healthy? This is quite the mystery, right? Most people view extreme voices as a source of vocal stress and vocal fatigue, and they are applying a method to mitigate the potential negative effects. This is why they usually suggest SOVTE. We view extreme voices as a skill to acquire. This is a totally different approach. SOVTE doesn't help with the acquisition of a new skill. That being said about SOVTE, we do know that the physical models are extremely solid, but the results of the studies are sometimes contradictory. What happened in an important number of cases, actually a third sometimes of the studies, is that even if the vocal self-assessment indicated a statistically significant improvement on voice emission, the acoustic and physiological parameters stays unchanged. So even if there are obvious benefit in using SOVTE in vocal practice, there are still many questions to be answered and a couple of research problems to solve. One of the main ones, underlined by a meta-analysis, is that even if SOVTE are used a lot by vocal teachers, their use is never systematized. Now, to quote the actual study, they said, it was also found that although the interviewed singing teacher used the SOVTE as a teaching and self-study practice tool, many of them uses different strategies in application of the same exercise and still neglect particularities such as time of use needed, intensity, and variation, emphasizing the necessity of randomized studies, especially applied on singers and singing students. So this is one of the main flaws of the SOVTE's pedagogy. While being constantly used, they are not that often seriously evaluated nor understood due to lack of knowledge. So SOVTEs are not a universal medicine and should be taught by skilled professionals, knowing how and why they include them and which ones of them in their pedagogy.